a disk floating through space with a tiny sun.
Hey, I'm Fight the Flat Earth, and welcome back to the channel that straight up murders Flat Earth stupidity and then hangs its corpse in the front garden for the rest of stupidity to see. Tonight we've got another Flat Earth debate. We have Constable Conspicuous and Faroh Pharms. Constable contacted me a few days ago and asked me to set this up, and as I am now doing Monday night debates, which I guess this is the inaugural show for, I thought why not get these guys on. Team Skeptic may join us a bit later, but we will see. I've just realised I put the wrong screen up, so I'm going to change that. There we go. Right, so Faroh Pharms, would you just like to take a minute to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Faroh Pharms. I've been what people refer to as a flat earther for a number of years, probably like 5-6 years now. And yeah, me and Conspicuous have gone at it before. We've had a debate before, so he wanted to set this up and have another pop. So here we are.
Fair enough. Short and to the point. Constable, do you want to just take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Constable Conspicuous, also known as Professor Games. I've been joining into the flat earth debunking crowd for... I'm sorry, that was my dog. Of course he's making noise when I'm in the middle of a damn debate. Like I'm saying, I'm Constable Conspicuous. I'm here because I think stupidity is a crime against humanity, and I'm here to lock it up and throw away the key.
Awesome. I like the enthusiasm. So there isn't any really particular format for tonight. I thought you guys could just take it in turns to raise one point at a time, have a discussion about that, and then when it reaches a natural conclusion, the next person can raise a point. So which of you would like to go first, or would you like me to toss a coin?
You mind if I go first? Because I have one particular question I wanted to ask Faroh.
Are you okay
just to start this off.
Faroh, are you okay if Constable
I'm
point first?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm just gonna. I'll sit back here in the side. I won't get involved unless you know the conversation's not going anywhere or you guys are shouting at each other. So just Constable, away you go.
All right, but this is initially going to start out with actually a comment you left on one of my videos that I was asking about. It was, and I quote the actual comment: "CC equals 33." I just figured we could start off by hearing your little explanation behind what that is. I mean, I get it. You know, CC, C is the third letter in the alphabet, 33. But I want to know how that particular has any say on the very person that I am.
Oh, it doesn't. You're definitely not intellectual enough to have any sort of high-level occultist knowledge, at least not on the exoteric side of things. But yeah, no, I was just pointing out merely what you just stated. It wasn't any dig at your personal.
And yet you just did a dig at my person. Well, good start there, buddy. Very good start. All right, now let's get on to the actual meat of things, which is the shape of our Earth. God knows why we are still debating this. All right, so where do you want to start off? Maybe any questions particular you want to ask me or anything you would like me to present? I didn't have anything formally set up, so it'll take me a while to think up of something. So go ahead. How do you want to do this?
Well, when we set up the floor like 2 minutes ago, you opted to make the first point, so I think you should do that. You know, right, present some proofs that the Earth is a globe in any kind of shape or form, whichever way you choose.
All right.
But second to that, actually, before you carry on as well, after our last debate, you were specifically told not to have this kind of loose, open discourse where you just get slapped about. So I don't know why you've just completely ignored the advice of your peers and gone for this kind of setup. But we'll crack on. Let's do this. Any way, shape or form.
I enjoy the smack talk as much as anyone else, but let's try and keep it to the point. So, Constable, what evidence do you have that the Earth is a sphere? with a circumference of approximately 25,000 miles?
One of my personal favorite points of evidence that I like to cite, because it's just easier for me. I can't vouch for everyone, but this is the easiest. The tracking of the star trails in the north southern spheres. When you look at Polaris and see the counterclockwise rotation of the sky in the northern hemisphere, and then you look at Sigma Octantis and see the clockwise rotation of the stars in the southern hemisphere, you start realizing that the only way we could actually see this form a geometrical spinning is on the surface of a spheroid. And yeah, I never really...
So just to clarify, your evidence is the fact that there is opposite rotating stars in the northern and southern hemisphere, yes?
And the very fact we have two celestial pulsars, at least given from seeing what flat Earth models I've seen, which are mostly the azimuthal equidistant projections.
Okay, all right. So that's quite a basic one. Faroh Pharms, his evidence is the fact that we have opposite rotating pole stars and clearly opposite rotating stars in the northern and southern hemispheres. How do you respond?
Well, I'm assuming that your claim is that that's impossible on a flat plane. So could you articulate a little bit more as to how that would be impossible on a flat plane? Not that obviously you think it occurs on a spherical plane, but how that would be impossible.
I could probably just like pull a little bit of visuals. Just focus on the I know it's a little hard to see on the webcam, but focus on just the circular nature of this little sticker here. Now pretend just the circle part of the sticker is the azimuthal equidistant projection, which is the mostly consented on flat Earth model, with the North Pole at the very center and the South Pole forming the ice wall. Now, yes, we would have the same motion of the stars in the northern hemisphere, but as soon as you cross the equator and get to the southern hemisphere, you start losing that motion. It'll continue to be at that counterclockwise, and the stars will just be like hitting towards the edge. I don't know a better way to articulate that, but you wouldn't get a Sigma Octantis at any point around the southern hemisphere. It would only comport with the whole sky spinning counterclockwise. Now on a sphere, I don't have a sphere on me right now, but like on like a sphere, you would have that motion I was talking about earlier.
Okay, so just one. Can I interject for a second?
Yeah.
Is your basic claim that on a flat model we would see the entire sky, the stars of the entire sky, the entire time, and thus they would all be rotating in one uniform pattern regardless of whichever hemisphere you're on?
Well, we would also be able to see Polaris from any point of the Earth, which we can't on in reality. But generally, yes, all the stars would be spinning counterclockwise instead of the clockwise motion in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, but due to what? Is that due to us being able to see all of the stars in the sky at one time?
Well, obviously, we can't see all the stars at one time. But then again, that depends on what you mean by all of them at one time.
I just want Constable, I think I'll clarify a question from Faroh here. Do you assume that we should be able to see all of the stars if the Earth is flat?
Yeah, it were a flat plane, all the stars would be visible, but they are not. We have specific constellations in the northern hemisphere and specific constellations in the southern hemisphere. A person in the southern hemisphere can't see Orion, just to name an example, and a person in the northern hemisphere can't see a constellation in the sphere, even though I don't.
Okay, all right. I think we understand the point now. So, Faroh, could you explain to us how it is possible to have counter-rotating stars on the flat Earth? How does that work on the flat Earth?
Well, there's a number of different possibilities that are presented by numerous individuals, but this is why I wanted to clarify his exact point, because I feel like, you know, unless I can really get what he's trying to articulate, it's kind of hard to address. But on a flat plane, you can't be under the assumption that we can see all of the stars. Everything is based upon perspective. All of our viewing obviously comes from our eyes, and, you know, optics work in specific ways. So when you're talking of the geometric patterns that we see and these things, it comes to mind that you're not necessarily taking into account certain aspects of perspective. Now, when it comes to how these stars could work, like I say, you can't see all of the stars at once, so they all converge into a point, which is the horizon. So our view of the stars is a limited one, based on our position. Now, just in simple terms, if you're stood, I don't know, if you get a CD or something and you're spinning it clockwise, and then you go to the other way,
Faroh?
I think he may have dropped out a second. Let me just check.
I was actually starting to get a little interested in what he was saying. In fact, I'm going to be
All right, let me just make sure.
drawing a little example here.
Faroh, are you there? It says that.
can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Ah, there we go. Okay.
You cut out for
Hello.
1 minute.
Yeah. Oh, mental. Right. Well, yeah. If you get a CD and spin it one way in front of you, and then you continue spinning it the same way and move behind it, it appears to be rotating in the opposite direction, either clockwise or counterclockwise.
It's cut out again.
Nope, you keep spinning it the same way.
Keep spinning it the same way. Sorry. All right. Okay. So if I keep
Yeah,
spinning it
and
the
then
same way.
you have to move around to the other side of it, as if you're going from north to south.
Right. Okay.
You're seeing?
So.
So it's just a matter of perspective. But how this plays into Earth model is that, like I say, you can only see a limited amount of the stars, and they all converge to a point, which is the horizon. So when you're looking from the opposite hemisphere back into the horizon, again, that's the limitation of your view of the stars.
Okay.
I have a way to respond to that.
Go ahead.
I have another drawing. I don't know how well this is going to show up because, oh, you can kind of see it. Now, at the top here, I'm sorry this is so blurry, but at the top here, you'll see the little thing with the dot is the azimuthal equidistant projection. That little dot represents Polaris. Again, you spin it the same way. And I know what you mean. Like, if you face the other way, it'll spin clockwise as opposed to counterclockwise. But if we look down here at this global, sorry, right here, I'm a very good artist. You can see that not only do we have opposite rotations, but the rotations are somewhat of a mirror to each other. Like how all the stars will rotate and how Polaris will move in the sky is a sort of a mirror to how Sigma Octantis and the stars in the southern hemisphere move. They all form this, it would appear to be this like dome shape, and that doesn't mean there's actually a dome. That's just trying to find a word for it. That is literally finding a word for it. Okay, may not have been the best word, but it proves shit. But the point is, you see that mirroring. You don't get that mirroring on the azimuthal equidistant projection because the southern hemisphere very edge. This particularly the South Pole, as opposed to on the sphere, it's by all accounts like mirror imaging.
Right. like we had this issue last time. You seem to be raging against the Azimut. I don't even know what that projection is called, mate. I don't prescribe to that model. What I mean, it presents a base for thought, but it's by no means the be all and end all. You know, I'm pretty sure that's some primitive map. So
okay,
again,
can I
you
ask
trying
a
to project
question?
that onto me, defense is.
Do you subscribe to any particular model so that we can have a basis as to something to discuss? Is there any particular map or physical constraints that you prescribe to?
Well, the concept of Antarctica containing the waters of the Earth is. I mean, like I say, that AE model does provide a basis for thought. So if we want to take that as a foundation, that's fine. But
so we can say that you prescribe to a model that has the Arctic in the middle and Antarctic around the edge, with the rest of the land masses somewhere in between. And do you say there's a dome, or is that something you're not sure of?
I would imagine so. Okay. I haven't been there myself. I haven't sent a rocket out to myself. I haven't got any way to verify that to you, but on all accounts of my research, I would imagine yes, there is. So I would be convicted to say yes, as opposed to.
I would like to use that point of you haven't personally been to that location, or I haven't personally done anything. I just want you to remember that, because there are some of these observations that, or in fact, many of these I have not done personally. I have not personally gone to Lake Pontchartrain, but I have used sound leads observations in the past. I have not fired a rocket, but I have seen the bare bones basics of what to say. I'm not Reg Rhetoric, but I'm able to get around it. But I have not personally done any of these. I haven't personally done the Cavendish experiment. I haven't personally tested and done any form of vacuum chamber experiments. But just keep that in mind, because if you start asking the question of if I actually did this or if I was there, and you instantly disregard it because I haven't, then that is a one-way standard. Just forewarning you off the bat.
Okay, right. So I think with regards
let's take it back.
With regards to rotating stars, that it's something that you can talk about perspective and stuff, and it's a conversation.
Well, one second. When Conspicuous just said about the mirroring, now this is something that actually comes into play within my thoughts of how these stars are viewed. So you have crepuscular rays from the sun, and the way that these appear from each hemisphere when viewed towards a horizon. Now, when you think about that and the way that those rays come into play, it would create on a flat disk model this mirroring like effect that Chris talks about when you're viewing the stars. So if you imagine a star rotation and you're viewing it from the opposite hemisphere, you would see this mirroring kind of effect, where the equator would have some kind of continuous pattern. I think there's a reasonably good video by P-Brain, maybe I think it was, but I don't know if you can play that. I wouldn't play that. It's kind of neither here nor there. But my point is that on my concept of a flat plane, these stars and what we observe is certainly not impossible, and it's more than likely probable. So this is his best proof.
Pardon. I'm sorry, but pardon me here, but I'm lost on how crepuscular rays of sunlight during the day has effects on celestial pulsars and their star trails in their respective hemispheres during the night. I'm legit lost on how that puzzle fits. Do you have anything else to kind of back that up?
It's drawing a parallel. It's drawing a parallel between the effects that we view from the different hemispheres. Now, I'm not surprised that you're confused because you don't
Define
seem
effects.
to actually look at the kind of, you know, I find that with this kind of globe defense theme, there isn't much research into what the other possibilities might be. So I'm not surprised that this is confusing you, but that's how it is.
Okay.
So
it's drawing a parallel between the effects that we see, and if that's confusing for you, then so be it.
Okay, you're just saying drawing a parallel to the effects. That is borderline, if not word salad. I'm going to need you to define your terms.
What?
Okay.
Define parallel or effect? Come on, bro.
This is what I was saying about this particular argument. It's something that can go around in circles because the different definition of perspective and stuff. So why don't we move on to some more kind of physical evidence and see if ask Faroh to present some positive evidence for the Earth being flat. Is that okay?
Yeah, man. If you're asking me, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. What is your positive evidence for a flat Earth?
There is no measurable curvature, and so I don't know if you guys heard of the Zen Garcia case.
Excuse me.
Right, Constable. Let's wait until he's finished his point. It's only fair that we try not to talk over each other.
My bad.
Yeah. So the Zen Garcia case. Carry on.
No, I'm aware that that's obviously between two individuals, and I believe that the person trying to prosecute Zen Garcia created a computer program or something of description. So we're not talking about physicals or anything like that when I'm referring to this, but it's been upheld in the court of law that due to the evidence that was presented by Zen Garcia, it can't be found that there is any measurable curvature upon the Earth, and thus I would say that's probably positive evidence.
Okay. So just to clarify, Faroh Pharms' evidence of the Earth being flat is that there is no measurable curvature. Constable, do you have a response to that?
No measurable curvature. I would like to point out again, and this is, I get it, old news, but this is, again, one of my personal, because of how visual it is, but Soundly's blank Pontchartrain observation, where he got a very good shot of the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway Bridge and how it was actually curving along with the water, and the bridge was actually level with the water, the same water that flat earthers claim never curve, and yet we have that measurable curve, and it actually conforms to the measured curvature of the planet.
One sec, I think I've got the image here that we can actually.
Right, do you want to present that photo? Or?
Bear with me, I'm just pretty sure I've got.
Yeah, I'm going to. Just gonna get.
I mean, like, if I've said there's no curvature and you just say Lake Pontchartrain curves and someone took a picture of it, it's kind of shit, isn't it?
Right. Okay.
You're asking. Hey, I brought this up to you before, and even GeoStraber helped me present this. That it actually did conform. That the measurable curve was the same as the curve you would see on the Earth with the measurements that were given. Oh, thank you. But yes, these are the observations of Lake Pontchartrain, and as you can see, yeah, that is a actual measurable curve across that water. The same water that, as flat earthers say, finds its own level.
Right. Well, that looks flat and level to me. If I'm seeing the entire thing, that is.
Really? Because
I'm seeing the thing on the left. I feel like part of my screen's being covered, to be fair. Oh, here we go. I'm on the full screen.
If you look at the picture to the bottom right, that's very, very good showing of the actual curvature. I admit the other ones, it's hard to tell. I mean, I can sort of see it.
How would you? 1 second. How are you describing the difference in curvature there? How is that so in your mind?
That's either due to how much atmospheric distortion the actual camera used. I mean, I don't have all the potential variables on my lap right now to say what's causing this slight difference. Again, it could just be as simple as the time of day and really what angle you're viewing this
to me,
at.
that seems drastic. That seems like a drastic difference. Like, you've just asserted that on the other two, it's kind of hard to tell, kind of alluding to it being flat, like I said. Now, the one on the bottom right, as you pointed out, clearly shows curvature. And your argument for that is that the curvature is caused by...
I didn't claim anything. I'm just throwing out ideas. Like I said, I don't know what's the exact reason for these. Can you let me finish, please?
Yeah, come on. Let him get his thought out, and then you can respond. Right, carry on, Constable.
Now, like I was saying, I'm no expert in photography or in atmosphere, but these are just some of the potential variables that are causing this. And I can name one other factor, but I'm not interested in just like making this a shouting match and just like throwing names at each other and just accusing one of doing the other. I'm interested in just having this as civil as possible. So these are some potential reasons for the slight discrepancy. I can't say for 100% sure, but those are the potential factors.
Okay. Can we pull the pictures back up at all?
Yeah, one sec.
Yeah. 3 variations, if that's cool.
Here we go.
Right. So you've pulled out these photos of Lake Pontchartrain, and 2 of them show what I would say is relatively flat, level, plain. The bottom right one, as you've asserted, shows way more curvature. So now what you said is that atmospheric conditions and other things that you're not actually too clued up on can cause there to be way more curvature shown to you than there actually is. So you're saying there's no curvature and you presenting this, where have we got?
Hey, excuse me, I'd like to correct you. I never said it caused more curvature. I just said it shows it better. The other two, I mean, it's a little harder, but it's still curvature. If the Earth was flat, there should be absolutely no curving over that water, and yet there is still, while it is harder to see, at least for myself and you, in these photos, there is still noticeable curve.
Okay, so do you, Constable, do you have any other evidence you can refer to that is good for curvature?
Any other? Well, there's the other obvious one, which is like ships going over the horizon, and of course, when you look at the actual formula for the law of angular perspective, it says in nowhere that all of a sudden these ships should be just disappearing hull first. They slowly start disappearing from the bottom up, and that implies that they're being obstructed by the actual curve of the Earth, despite that water, as many flat earthers say, is level. Which, I admit they're accurate with it being level, but that does not mean flat.
Okay, so Faroh, how do you respond to ships going over the horizon?
Okay, so 2 things that I'd like to ask here. First, what is the formula for the law of angular perspective, Constable?
I often botch this up, but it's alpha equals 2 arctan times the square root of g over 2r. Alpha is the angular size of the object, g is the actual size of the object, and r is the distance to the object. Now, I haven't really practiced with this particular formula enough myself, but I have seen it used by those who are rather adept at using it and have been able to make predictions with it, with the law of angular perspective, to actually measure how much a certain object of a certain size should shrink down the further away it gets. And again, there is nowhere in that formula that factors in all of a sudden an arbitrary disappearance of the object from the bottom up.
Okay, so you are first asserting that when ships go over the horizon or something goes over the horizon, it's disappearing over the curvature of the Earth, yeah?
I'm merely just presenting this observation, and the only foreseeable conclusion is that it's going over some form of curve. Even those who, long before the internet, just for example, ancient Greeks, again, I'm just making example purposes here, they would just see a ship go over, and all they would need is a good telescope. Eventually, all they would see is the mast of the ship. The rest of it obviously didn't just suddenly sink, because then it would just come right back up. I mean, that's also a good example of the ship, is that a ship coming back towards the land. First, you'll only see like the mast of the ship, and then slowly you'll see the rest of it. Just to name an example of like the opposite effect going on.
Right. So, again, I have to make it clear. Are you asserting that when a ship goes over the horizon, it's going over the curvature of the Earth? Simple yes or no, really?
That's the I don't like the word assert, but at least for the explanation for the globe side is that, yeah, it's going over the curve of the Earth. What is the flat Earth explanation of this, and and what is your positive evidence for it?
You already relatively know this, but I'll go through it again. But first, from your assertion that ship disappear from the bottom up, and in reverse they come from the mast upwards, what would you expect if it was a flat plane and things were disappearing because the angular size become too small for you to be able to see? What would you expect to disappear first or come back into view first?
Actually, there would be nothing disappearing first. It would eventually just disappear in totality because it's too far away for our eyes to pick up. But then we could use something with ample zoom, like a telescope or a camera, to bring that back into view with ample enough zoom. It would be able to magnify the image. And oh, I just noticed that that image up right there. Thank you, Craig. But
so
yeah, there would be that happening on
something back in flat plane.
Yeah, but eventually that is just going to completely disappear from that hump, and we cannot bring it back. The only reason for that is if we look at the geometry of a sphere, we're like, oh, it's going over the curve of the sphere, and now we can no longer see it.
But you just asserted that we could bring it back if we zoom in.
I said if it were a flat surface, we could bring it back with ample enough zoom. But since this is curved, no amount of zoom is going to bring it back as it starts disappearing from the bottom up.
Right, so when something disappears from the bottom up and it goes over the horizon, which you assert is the curvature of the Earth, you're saying that we cannot zoom in and bring it back from that point?
You can because it's behind the curve.
All right.
Is there a particular
yeah, I mean, that's just one of the most basic. I mean, Craig, do you want to do you agree with that you can't zoom back in and see a ship once it's disappeared from our view of our natural perspective?
This really isn't my debate. I'm just trying to help the conversation progress along.
Right. Is it?
I'm trying to make sure.
Can we put a video of some kind then?
Do you have any videos that you could think of that show that it can come back over the curve? I'll happily present that for everybody.
Not over the curve, over the horizon, Craig. Let's just keep that.
I'm sorry. I will try not to assume anything. Obviously, we know my thoughts, but as a moderator, I will try and be as neutral as possible.
What can I say? Give me 2 minutes.
No worries.
But yeah, can continue the conversation if you can.
All right. So, I mean, yeah. So far, I've been. If I could just interject my own thoughts, and if this is me stepping over my bounds, please, Greg, stop me. But so far, I have been providing at least good positive evidence for the globe from my side. But the first attempt you had of positive evidence, no measurable curve. That is a negative claim. If I may just like make a small critique. So might I suggest like trying to find another form of evidence or proof that is positive evidence for the flat earth, whatever it may look like, and not just negative evidence for a globe. Because if you just like try disproving it's a globe, well then we'll just try to find any other shape, you know, a cube, a hexagon, a pyramid, any form of other silly shape. I mean, of course that's just me being funny about it, but
well, of course, the possibilities of being those shapes are quite reasonable. But I mean, it being a globe is what we're talking about. So, you know, if it's not a globe, then wherever you're standing.
Well, I'm just trying to tell you that not a globe does not automatically mean it's flat. I mean, you need to go from the transition of okay, it's not a globe. Oh, here's something that we seem to see that we see that seems to show that it's in fact flat. That is the process that we are talking about here.
Yeah, I mean, flat isn't really a shape; it's just our observation. So that's why I'm saying that, you know, there's no measurable curvature.
All right, but one more.
I don't think anyone who's a quote unquote flat earther claims to have been to the edge and gone around it. So for all anyone knows, really, it could just be a big square.
R.I.P. flat.
You know, if we're talking about actual shapes. But we're not talking about shapes, we're talking about our observation. So when I said no curvature and you said that's a negative claim, I cited the Zengar-Zir case, which is held up in a court of law in your, which I would say is positive.
I hate to say this, but I'm not exactly familiar with that particular case.
I don't think you need to be. Trade is, and what I'm saying can be verified as truth. It's been upheld in the court with no curvature able to be found.
Excuse me, I was not done talking.
Wait, okay. Let's not get heated as much as possible.
Apologies.
Do you have that video, Faroh?
I emailed it to you.
Oh, you emailed it to me.
I haven't actually.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
All right. Well, Craig. While you bring that up, may I just say one last thing regarding the last?
I haven't actually viewed that video either. I just.
So Faroh, and in regards of, I don't really have to look into it. Craig is. You just said Craig's automatically on his side because he knows about the case. That's not really good enough for me. I want to do my own research, look this up myself, read up on the actual case, see what actually happened, and see if what you say about it is completely on the up and up. Because flat earthers have I'm not saying you're doing this, at least from what I've seen, but flat earthers have a long history of just cherry picking the smallest, tiniest little thing. That on the surface.
Let's not talk about like flat earthers in general and like get bogged down in things like that right here. Let's just stick to evidence. Let me just get in this video up.
You're right. We're waiting on a court transcript, so all we have really is Zengar-Zir's word for his interpretation of what's occurred. But the facts are that he was prosecuted, taken to court by someone that thought that he owed them £15,000 because they proved the curvature of the earth. It was upheld in the court that was not the case, and thus he hasn't had to pay the £15,000. Those are the facts. So the ins and outs and the details are yet to be revealed as facts, but those that I've just laid down are facts. So,
okay.
I mean, if there isn't any evidence of curvature, then what can we? But yeah, let's have a look at this video. I haven't actually viewed what this video is gonna show us, but
Okay, this is from Dazza the cameraman. Let me just get that to play.
Oh, Daz. I've heard of him.
Yeah, this is actually a very good one. And I know.
This should be interesting.
As I'm
I'm actually now very interested in what
who would be prepared to step
you
up and accept the
are
challenge
hoping to show
to
on
take some screenshots
Daz's
from this
video, who,
I'm even
as far as I
prepared to send you
remember,
the original video
is on the
if
globe
you like
side.
that. Take some screenshots from the video and compare
No
the
idea.
proportion
I haven't viewed
of the
this video.
ship that is
Hopefully,
hidden
it will
and
show
compare it at
a
different stages as I zoom
ship
in.
coming
Are we
back
seeing
over what you
more
presume is
of
curvature
the ship above
with
the
a little bit of
horizon
zoom.
I never said it.
as I zoom in, or does the proportion remain exactly
If
the
you're
same?
not presuming it's curvature, what are we on about?
All right, well, let's just see what
We
the
can
video,
clearly
like,
see the
let's
crane
see what the video
towers coming into
shows.
view and the bridge of the ship there. So we should have enough information here now to take a good screenshot that we can compare as I zoom in further. Even clearer shot now. Now I am focusing in on the ship on the middle. But
All right, those are
across to the
some of the
left in
mass
just
of
a
that
moment.
particular form of
So
ship.
here's another clearer
Another ship,
opportunity
and
to get a screenshot.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say that actually is pretty good evidence that once a ship has passed whatever we are saying the horizon line is, that it won't come back with zoom. I think Constable's point here is that
Right. No, one sec. If we go back a little bit, because this is for Constable to defend, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go back just a little bit in the video, right? Maybe back a bit further. Is this showing were those masts hidden, or were they never hidden?
Let me see.
From here, can we see them?
Right. With the naked
So
eye,
this
I
is
don't
a
really think
natural-
you can see. With the naked eye, you can't see them.
Okay, cool. So that's our natural perspective. That's our natural view. That's what you would say. The ship has gone over curvature of the Earth from this point here. Now, when you zoom in, as he does later in the video, and you can see the mast coming back, the only thing that you can really take from that, if you're coming from your angle, is that ship is coming back over the curvature.
Okay. So I think the question here, it would be, why does not the entire ship come back over? Why only part of the ship?
Probably because you haven't zoomed enough.
That's like literally zoomed all the way in. I think Dazza the cameraman uses
all the way in.
No, that is maximum. Right. Okay. So that is maximum zoom. I'm reading the description of the video here. Maximum zoom from Nikon, Nikon P1000 with 125 times optical zoom.
Yeah.
I would like to point something out.
But what about
I never said
5,000 times optical zoom?
But
Do you think it would come back in then?
Still only be seen.
No. Right. So okay. Sorry. This is not my debate. I'm going to shut up. Right. Right. So Constable. His question there. His question there was, if there was a more powerful zoom, do you think more of the ship would have come back into view?
No. I think you would get a very view of what is visible from what we see, but you would never be able to bring back the entire ship. It's over that curve. You ain't getting it back.
So, to clarify, Faroh, you think that if there was a more powerful zoom, more of the ship would have come back into view?
I know it would have.
You know it would have.
What you have to now do by your assertion is now say Constable. Constable, why is it that when you zoom in from your natural perspective, some of the ship does come back in then? Why is that if it's gone over the curve from your natural perspective?
I never said that. If I like,
well, that's it. Right, so let's take the video back again.
That way, that's not what I meant.
Can we take the video back again to a natural perspective where everyone agrees that we can't see the fucking masts right here? Can you see the masts?
Not with the naked eye. The angular
resolution is right. Can we have Constable just say it in 2 minutes? We have to come back and do this again. Yes, hang on. Let's just say this. Can you see it, mate? Squint really hard. It might just come back.
Can you?
Right. Okay, that answers the question. Constable, do you think you can see any of the masts here?
I I'd have to say no. I can see what seems to be the other ship, but I can't see those masts. Now, let me clarify what I said.
I'm on my phone and I can see the other ship. Oh my god. We're talking about the mast.
I said
okay, it was a yes or no question. We've dealt with this for 5 minutes. Can we move back to the end of the thing?
Right. Okay.
You've clarified my question. I have one question for you. Can you see the mast? No is the answer. Thank you. Let's get back to the end of the video where you can now see the mast due to us zooming in. Okay. So can you explain to me, Constable, why it is with a little bit of zoom we can now see the masts that aren't visible from the naked eye?
Hang on. Let me try to bring that back.
No, answer the direct question. So rather than circling round and round. So
okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I just want to keep this on track as much as possible, and then I actually have a question for Faroh about this.
All right. So
Faroh, do you want to just repeat your question again for Constable?
Okay, so we've all agreed that from the naked eye position, from a natural perspective, the mast disappears over the horizon. The horizon, when it disappears, being your assumption of curvature. So it's disappeared over the curvature. Why, with a little bit of zoom, when we go back to the end of the video, do the masts come back into sight? Why is that if it's gone over the curvature from the naked eye position?
Okay. Constable? Constable, you there? I think we may have lost him. Constable? One sec. He's disconnected. He's just trying to reconnect. All right. Well, he's trying to reconnect.
We can just...
Let me ask a question, if you don't mind. So, as soon as the masts appear based on the angular resolution of what the camera can see, why is it that the same proportion of the camera of the masts stays visible, rather than more and more of the masts coming into view? As Dazza has done here, he's actually, this is the zoomed in view, and then when it's zoomed out, he's taken a screenshot and zoomed that in and matched to show that there is no difference between how much is visible when you're zoomed in and out. So how would that benefit your argument?
I have lost connection for some reason.
That's okay. I just carried on the conversation. Yeah.
It's cool. Let's go back to Constable and you can reassert your question again. So Constable, why is it with a little bit of zoom, these things come back into view which go over the horizon?
Well, obviously the mast compared to the entire ship is, from that distance, is too angularly small for our eyes to detect. But once we zoom in and magnify the image, we will be actually able to view those masts again. If you notice on the other ship, what looks to be like the hull, but we cannot see something so angularly small as those masts. So
all the rest of the ship.
I can. All right, just hold that image right there, or go back a little. Go back a little bit. Okay, right about there. Here I can kind of make out those masts, and here I can more clearly see what seems to be the hull of the ship. Now go back just a little more of a ways until all we can make out is about and right there, that's perfect. Right here I can only make out what seems to be the hull of the ship, but I cannot see the masts whatsoever, nor can I just see them on where would be the left of the image. So yeah, if the masts are too angularly small from this distance, even with this little bit of zoom in for our eyes to pick up. But once we start zooming in more and more, those masts, which are much angularly smaller than the hull of the ship, become more visible due to the mast. But I want to point out again that we still only see the masts, and we cannot bring the rest of that ship into view.
Cannot due to what?
Due to the hull of the ship being over the curve of the horizon. But at least,
so not its angular side.
At least,
You see, I'm trying to get how you jump from being able to zoom in and bring something back because it's been too small for our natural perspective. You know, the angular size being too small for us to see. You zoom in, comes back, and how you jump from that to then asserting that you can't zoom anymore. I'm
trying to explain. I'm trying to explain this the best I can. Like angular size and curve of the horizon, they're not mutually exclusive. They're both an actual factor, and I'm just trying to explain how both of these are like phenomenon at the same time.
No, see, this is I will agree with you that angular size is a factor we have to take into consideration, but curvature of the Earth is the point of contention, so I'm calling that your assumption. So unless you can prove that there is a curvature of the Earth, which I'm sure this here image and any other image you're going to produce can't do, then, you know, saying that's the whole point of this.
So, all right. So, hang on. You say curvature is a point of contention. Well, I would like to show you a flat earther that actually proved curvature, and that was Jaranism. No, wait, no, Jaranism. Apologies for some reason I had a hard time with that name.
Interesting there. Let me just put that at the beginning, and we can just.
Mind if I just give a short synopsis as to what the experiment was?
Well, this is just like 30 seconds long. Let this play so the audience gets a bit of context.
If you're seeing through this hole, through the next hole, and seeing the light at the backboard, or at 17 feet off the water, the Earth is flat. If he's holding it up at 23 feet high and we're seeing the light, well, that's because the Earth's curved. So I should only be able to see it when it's at 17 feet. Okay, go ahead and drive down there, Enrique. You're going to hold the light there. Enrique, how high is your light?
17 feet.
I mean, you know, it's as, we don't see you, Enrique. Lift up your light way above your head. Interesting. Interesting there.
So yeah, those were the specific results like Jaron was talking about. If the light stayed at that distance or at that height, the Earth was flat. But if it was at that other distance, the Earth was actually curved. As we saw, we got the result for a curved Earth. And interesting was Jaron's only reaction.
That seems like a kind of loose experiment. I mean, how did they?
Admittedly, it was a relatively loose experiment.
Right. Well, we're really trying to talk about proof for the curve of the Earth here, mate. So, like, let's just quit the loose shit and get to the real proof that you got.
So, how does that image, that experiment, what Jaranism did, how does that not demonstrate that there is curve?
Well, like I said, it's a relatively loose experiment. So I'd like Constable, since he's presenting it, to explain how they made sure the ground was level, for starters.
This was at the shore of a beach, which is obviously sea level. So you know that litigates any undulation within the land, because I mean, if you've actually gone to the beach, the sand is level with the actual water. I mean, that's just probably a bastardization. That's probably bastardizing like the small stuff about it, but generally that is a good place if you're going to measure curvature on land. It's good to do it by the shore of the ocean to mitigate any.
What did they do? Did they sink the boards into the ground?
That I am not 100% sure, but what they
Well,
did
this
do
is
was
what I
make sure
mean by
that
loose,
the
because you're
holes of the.
presenting shit that you don't
Can
actually
I?
know how it was
I
even
was.
conducted.
I'm not finished. I'm not finished.
You said enough. You're not
They
sure
were.
how it was conducted. That's plenty for me. That's all right.
Can I finish?
Okay, all right. Calm down. Everyone calm down.
Apologies. I don't like being interrupted. Now, as far as the boards, again, I can't ask Jaren himself, but from looks of how the experiment was conducted, they made sure that, both boards were of equal height, and the holes they cut out were of equal height for the experiment. Otherwise, they would have really big problems, and that light wouldn't have shined through both those holes.
Right, can I interject here for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Now you may say something.
You disrespect all sorts of flat earthers, like just in a general term. But now you're going out of your way to defend their ability to conduct real scientific experiment. It's amazing to me. So the reason I asked whether you knew how... 1 second, you don't like being interrupted, so shut the fuck up when I'm talking.
Apologies.
Come on.
Got a little worked up.
So the reason I asked if you knew how the boards were set up is because obviously if you're by a beach where there's a lot of water and a lot of, water residue and these things within the medium that you're going to put these solid boards in, then how do you account for sinkage in the time that you're taking these calculations and things? How do you account for all of these different effects? I mean, even taking it by water and using light, the kind of refraction you're going to get on your measurements, if it's dark and stuff, is kind of weird. It just seems weird to me that you're going to pull up something as positive evidence for proof of curvature that's by flat earthers, an experiment, then defend their ability to conduct the experiment and actually not know how it was conducted anyway. It's weird. Stop it.
I can actually interject all of these. It's not the flat earthers themselves. I'm actually looking at the experiment. Their experiment itself was good. However, how they handled the results.
You don't know how it was conducted. What are you on about? How is it good if you don't know how it was conducted?
Hey!
Right, let's not talk over each other and let people finish their point. Right, so I think at this point, again, it gets to the point of a circular argument. So let's move on to another point. So you've both had 1 point each. So Constable, we'll go back to you. What is your next evidence that the heliocentric model is correct?
All right. So curvature is done and dusted. I like to challenge the proposition of the firmament, and that is with any of the rocket launch recordings that has been done by Red's Rhetoric and a few others. And that is, like, obviously if this was a firmament if that was a concealed container of air, we would see equal pressure throughout the atmosphere and not a pressure gradient like we see. The higher you get, the thinner the air becomes. And we don't even need rockets for this. I mean, I live in New York, and I've actually taken the trip to Colorado. I had to actually be careful with how much I exerted myself in Colorado because it is such a much higher level from altitude from sea level than it is from here in New York. So, the air is thinner, and my body is not used to that. It'll take a while for my body to get used to those less oxygen molecules due to the higher elevation. And if you want an even more extreme case without rockets, there's this little area on Mount Everest that is called the death zone, where the air is so unbelievably thin, so lacking of oxygen that your blood can't even clot a wound because of, your blood is so lacking of oxygen that your blood will just continue to bleed from just even minorest of scratch. It won't clot. And obviously the lack of oxygen, you'll start getting dizzy and disoriented and eventually pass out and die from lack of oxygen.
Okay, so to clarify, your evidence now is basically that we have a gradient in our atmosphere that goes from 14.7 psi to 0 psi, yes?
Correct, and these are bare basic
Okay.
real-world observations that have been measured
All right.
with examples of the pressure gradient.
Yeah, let's keep it basic as that then. The fact that we know there is a pressure gradient. So, Faroh, how is that explained on a flat Earth?
I believe there's numerous ways. So really, the first assertion was wanting to attack the composition of the firmament. So the composition of the firmament has many different models, I suppose, depending on who you are. So really, I don't know whose model you're attacking, but let's just say that there is a solid dome firmament, which I would have to also assert really on a logical basis.
Okay.
So if we go with that, and there is a solid dome, are you then asserting that within a solid container there cannot be a pressure gradient within a solid container?
Not from.
Yeah, I think the question is rather none of us are denying that there is pressure gradients, but how is it that that is possible on the flat Earth?
Well, like I say, there's many different ideas. I mentioned it to Conspicuous last time about biogeochemical cycles, and we live in a active system where cycles take place distributing gases, and they're recycled due to different processes within nature that we can view in many different forms. The growing of plants and the heat from the sun coming and heating the ground. All of these different cycles that we observe naturally cause or play a part in creating this pressure gradient within a solid container.
So you're saying that these natural phenomena like photosynthesis and sunlight are causing this pressure gradient, and not any form of force on the air molecules. I'm just making sure I'm
I guess
not.
The motion of all of these processes create what we would perceive as forces, I guess.
So to clarify, just to make sure we're on the page here, Faroh, you're saying the reason we have the pressure gradient is because of the natural cycles of breathing and plants absorbing CO2 and putting out oxygen, etc. You're saying that the pressure gradient, which has been demonstrated to go from 14.7 psi at sea level to practically zero, is there because of natural life cycles, yeah?
Yeah, they most certainly play a massive part in creating what we see as a pressure gradient, yeah.
Okay, Constable, how do you respond to that?
I'm not 100% sure where to start, but let's just start with photosynthesis, and literally the process of photosynthesis in terms of its involvement with gas was converting carbon dioxide into oxygen. So, all right, so I'm sorry, but I'm still at a little bit of a loss of the exact minute details of how something like photosynthesis can create this pressure gradient, because that's literally, photosynthesis is just how plants process CO2 and sunlight and water to basically live. I'm lost how that has any effect on the physics of behind the pressure gradient.
That's
So
kind
I'm
of
just
the simplification in itself. So you're kind of showing your level of understanding here, but generally what I'm saying is the accumulation of all of these biochemical cycles creates what we perceive as this pressure gradient within a contained system.
So let's just say if photosynthesis stops and we just decide to be assholes to the planet and burn down all the trees and get rid of all plants, the pressure gradient goes bye-bye?
Well, I don't know that you'd be around to know.
That's not the question.
It's
a yes or no. If photosynthesis were to stop by any means.
Okay, let me interject. How would you then explain the same pressure gradient, say, being over a desert as to being over a rainforest? Why is it that we see the same pressure gradient in a place that there is much more biochemical action than a place that there isn't?
Because Earth is in complete balance. The oscillation, the natural oscillation that we see is in perfect balance, and so in order for life to thrive as it does, the balance has to maintain, and so that's what we see: perfect maintenance of the balance of natural forces, regardless of position.
And I'll say this again: if this balance were to be disrupted, again, would the pressure gradient just decide to piss off? That's a yes or no question. If this balance was disrupted, would the pressure gradient stop?
If numerous aspects of substance exchange were to disappear, then yes, I would imagine the pressure gradient that we see would change. It wouldn't disappear. It would change because certain aspects wouldn't be around, you know.
Do you have any form of experimentation? It doesn't have to be your experiment, but anyone's experiment at all that can demonstrate this in any form of...
What I've just asserted there is kind of logic. I mean, if you've seen these density tower sorts of things, so they represent some sort of a gradient. So if we take that as a gradient within a contained system, if you remove certain aspects of it, they're not going to be there, and thus the overall picture of what you see as the pressure gradient has changed, which is what I've just said. That's just logic. I don't think I need to really describe that any better than I have done.
What if we were to put that density tower in 0G environment? Because there's still that, just to show if it's all just like this natural density or whatever it is, and there's not actually the force of gravity causing this particular gradient or whatever, you know, we need to see if gravity is indeed at all a factor.
Yeah, but now
or in fact,
you see we skipped from now saying, can there be a pressure gradient within a contained system, and is gravity causing the gas pressure that we see? I mean, you just pulled a vacuum out of nowhere. Why would we put a density gradient tube?
I didn't say vacuum. I did not. I need to correct. I did not say vacuum.
Zero
I said
G.
Zero G.
Zero G.
Fire.
Yeah. Okay.
So right, if I could just clarify Constable's question, there is a video going around, and I'm sure you've seen it, of a density tower in a 0G parabolic plane, where as soon as the plane enters its parabolic dive and the downward acceleration of 9.8 meters per second squared disappears, the density column no longer maintains its layers of density.
That's what I'm talking about there. I mean, because I'm sorry for the assumption, but I'm guessing this is all like a replacement for the force of gravity that Faroh Pharms is proposing here, as opposed to the current model, which involves gravity being the cause of this pressure gradient.
Well, the initial question was, can there be a pressure gradient in a contained system? So, not really.
Well, now the next. I guess I'm focusing on the next question.
If you want to change the question, if you want to change the question, that's fine, and move on again. That's cool. But
I'm just trying to break down these details the best I can with what I know. I'm by no means a physicist like Craig or.
Well, I'm not a
by any means scientist.
I've just got a degree in physics. I'm not a physicist. I'm not JM Truth. Come on.
Fair enough, but hey, you're further along than I am. So yeah, I'm just trying to. I guess I'm just trying to break this down the best I can. And after we discuss this, I would be interested to hear another talking point. We will hear another talking point from Faroh on his next bit of evidence for a flat Earth, right? Just double checking.
I mean, are we happy to move on from the pressure gradient? I've got a lot of questions, but Farah, I think I need to arrange a debate between me and you because there is many things that I want to talk about, but this isn't about me. I'm just the moderator here. So
Yeah, no, sounds good. You got my email, man, but
yeah,
you have to unblock me on your chats and that, bro.
I don't think I've got you blocked. If you are, I will unblock you. No worries, because you've been absolutely fine tonight. All right, so let's move it back to you then, Farah. What is your? It's going to be the final one for tonight. So, what's your final evidence that the Earth is in fact flat?
Okay, well, in order to have a heliocentric ball, I'll just follow on from the last question about gravity. For me, gravity is a magic force that transcends all religion. I know a lot of you are going to find that a humorous admission, if you'd like to call it that. But yeah, gravity is a crazy illusion. So ground, the Earth, for me, a model. We don't have a perspective of Earth from the outside realm, from space. There is no view of Earth because we can't go there. It's a non-existent place. So that's our standpoint, and that's a lot for you guys to get your head around. But having said that, ground is the natural resting place of all things. Is that relatively agreed?
Constable?
Do I fucking have to?
Well, just let him do his point. Let's just stick with the point. Do you agree that the ground is the natural resting place of all things?
That I don't even. I don't even know how to interpret that in any way, shape, or form. Honestly, the ground is the natural resting point. I mean, that is.
Okay, right. Let me just
a little more,
right.
little more specific
okay,
to the terminology.
Yeah. Farah, could you clarify the question a little? If that's okay.
Can you name anything that doesn't have to exert what we would perceive as a force to leave ground?
Anything that doesn't exert. Let me just make sure I heard that correctly. Anything that doesn't exert a force to leave the ground.
Yeah, have a force exerted.
Not that I know of, no.
Okay, so we then have to assume that ground is the natural resting place of all things, no?
Okay. I'm not sure how to specifically go into that, but I would like to I would like to just like talk about something right quick, just to talk about there is no force causing things to fall down. If that is all right. You know, I want to address that claim first, and then I'll go into like the other.
It's kind of jumping from the right. It is a bit of an ambiguous question, to be fair, Faroh.
Not really. I feel like it's very direct. There's been two different explanations of it. Either ground is the base of all, the natural resting place of all material objects, or can you assert anything that doesn't have a force exerted upon it to leave ground?
Okay, so
I answered
right. So let me just clarify the question then to help with this. Basically, Faroh, you're saying that everything seeks its level to be at the ground. Everything is trying to be at the ground. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
No. Again, that's kind of switching and turning it the opposite. In order for everything to leave ground, it has to have a force exerted upon it.
Yep, I think we can all agree on that, right, Constable?
It's kind of the chicken versus the egg here.
I just said, yeah. But excuse me. Yeah. I said
it's okay. I'm just trying to get. Yeah. Okay. So yes, Constable agrees that there has to be a force applied for something to leave the ground.
Okay.
But there doesn't have to be a force for things to go to the ground. I want
Fucking
to
hell.
clear that up. I want to clear that up. That's a valid question. This whole, you're just saying there has to be a, I need to make sure.
That was
right,
the question.
right, okay, sorry.
That was
Yeah, I thought the same as you, Faroh. Yeah, the way you phrased that there,
sounded
Constable,
like an assertion, bro.
Yeah. So you're asking, Faroh, does there have to be a force for things to go to the ground, right?
Yes, that's what I'm asking. Does there have to be a force for things to suddenly go to the ground, like so?
Okay.
No, so what we perceive as being called gravity is things returning to its natural resting position. If we've all agreed reasonably that everything has to have a force exerted upon it to leave the ground, then why would we assume that an object would have a force upon it when it's returning to its natural resting place? Surely it's just a process.
And you think that, I'm just double checking, so you're saying that force to return to its natural resting place is just density? I'm double checking here.
Well, what we're talking about is why do things fall, and you're asserting it's gravity. I'm asserting that in order for things to fall, it has to have a force exerted upon it for it to get up in the first place. That's why things fall, because it's been lifted from its natural resting position. Very simple.
And okay, so there just has to be a force exerted on it. Actually, let's
right. I think
play this game.
Let me clarify what Faroh's saying. He's saying basically there doesn't have to be a force pushing down on things to make them go to the ground, because there was already a force that lifted them up, and it's just that force returning to its natural state.
It's the material returning.
The material returning to its natural. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we've all agreed that everything has a natural resting position of ground, and that in order to leave its natural resting position,
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
It has to have a force exerted upon it. Now, what we're talking about is observing it returning to its natural resting position, and the question is why. The answer is because it's had a force exerted upon it in order to be out of equilibrium, if you want to call it that.
I have a little thought experiment just to be on my end, and and this whole thing is that there is no force, and it's only just returning to its natural resting point, whatever the fuck that means. Now, do you know the Earth's gravitational force? Now, this is just like throwing it out there. Do you know what it is?
What do you mean?
It's 9.8 meters. 9.8 meters per second squared is the rate object falls, at least until you hit terminal velocity. But that's a whole other topic. Now, you're saying that 9.8 meters per second square acceleration, that is not a force pulling it down, but that is just because I lifted this up, but I did not lift it up at 9.8 meters per second. But I can drop at that rate. That's just because I started with a force with it to begin with. I'm just wondering how lifting something.
Reassert your question again. Reassert your question again, because that was just mad. I don't know if I phased out from it.
I'm just trying to.
I think he's trying to say basically.
Just let him try and reassert it again, Greg. Sorry, man. Just one second.
I'm just trying to move things along.
All right, I'll try. Let me try to say this again. So again, we can agree that things fall at a rate of 9.8 meters per second, or 9.8 meters per second squared. Now, you're saying that that's not a downward force. That's caused by just the fact that I'm lifting something off the ground to begin with. But if I'm lifting something exponentially slower than 9.8 meters per second, why is it the second I let it go, it goes exponentially faster than that very slow rate I lifted it at? That is a legitimate question. Like, I'm lifting this very, very slowly. Why does it like?
You're asking me why the ball doesn't do what you're doing in reverse without your hand. Your hand, right? What I'm saying is the force lifting it out of equilibrium right now is your hand, okay? It's sitting in its natural resting position, okay? So the only force acting upon it is your hand taking it out of that. Now, as soon as you let go of it, the force is no longer acting upon it, and therefore it just does what it does, which is full of what you observe as 9.8 meters per second.
And that 9.8, no, it's just 9.8 meters per second, or
right.
9.8
so
meters.
right.
But you're saying,
hang
on, I'm not done.
Your hand is the force. As soon as you take your hand away, there is no longer the force acting upon it, and therefore it just does what it naturally does.
Okay.
Which is return to its natural resting.
So there's no force causing that acceleration.
Constable, do you mind
Constable, do you
mind if I ask him a question? Okay, so assuming you're right, and this YouTube button would the force is the fact that I've lifted it up, therefore I put force into it, right? So why is it that there is a slightly different gravitational acceleration on different parts of the Earth? Why is it that 9.8 meters per second isn't an exact measurement all over the planet? It ranges like from, I think, 9.79 to 9.81 meters per second squared, depending on where you are. So how is that? What's causing that discrepancy if, according to your logic, the same amount of force has always been applied to lift it up?
Well, now we're not talking necessarily about the reaction, the interaction of the force, but the interaction with the force and the medium that we're in. I think. I mean, what would you assert would be the? I mean,
okay,
sure.
So clarify my question.
Let me just clarify. Let me sort of clarify what I'm getting from it. So, from your assertion of there being gravity at different points in the Earth, gravity is weaker and stronger.
No. Okay. So what I'm saying is, for instance, the gravitational acceleration that we can measure at the North Pole is ever so slightly stronger than the gravitational acceleration we can measure at the equator. The reason for that, assuming the Earth is a ball, as we say, rotating at the speeds that we say, the reason there is that difference is because at the equator there's like a 0.003% centrifugal force acting against gravity, which is the fact that there's a bigger angular velocity of the rotation of the planet, the 1,000 miles an hour that's always brought up. So that creates a centrifugal acceleration, which acts against the force of gravity, slightly reducing the sum of forces ends up being slightly less for the downward acceleration than it is at the North Pole, where the centrifugal acceleration literally doesn't exist because that angular momentum doesn't exist. So on our model, that's the reason why there is a slightly different gravitational acceleration. And this can be demonstrated in the fact that things weigh different amounts based on where you are, which is why scales always have to be calibrated based on location. Because if you took a pair of scales from the North Pole and weighed a 1 gram bit of metal on it, and then took that same set of scales and that 1 gram weight to the equator, it would weigh ever so less. You have to literally adjust scales based on where you are to account for that centrifugal acceleration.
Okay. Well, again, with your assertion, you're now bringing another, what I would claim as an assumption into it, which is that the Earth is spinning. So, I mean, in order to go from these topics and introduce new
wait, Constable, let him
aspects, we have to jump to a whole new topic. So, I mean, I kind of just since this is the last point, I'd like to kind of stick to why things fall. Really, I mean, doing that, we have to jump to the Earth spinning and
all right, well, my point was more the fact that, yes, we can agree that things not only fall, but accelerate, right? We can all agree that is a fact, that when you let go of something, it goes from moving at zero miles an hour to whatever speed it is when it hits the floor, which is an acceleration, right? And my point is that acceleration is different depending on where you are in the world. So let's ignore the fact that my explanation for that is that the Earth is rotating, and just ask why that would happen on a flat Earth if your explanation is just the forces put into it by me lifting it up. Why is there a difference in that acceleration?
One, I would like to say that just assuming that, well, I wouldn't say that the differentiation in the numerical values that you have for the acceleration and gravity really plays in your favor. I think that, you know, that being the main thing that holds your model together, the fact that there is such differentiation in the numerical values doesn't really play in your favor. Although the way you've described it being specifically set out in different locations on a different model, i.e. the geocentric flat model, there could be many factors in play. Obviously, you've got the magnetic North Pole. You don't have the magnetic South Pole. However, the outer ring could, I suppose, in theory, can contain some sort of a magnetic structure. You've obviously got all sorts of frequencies at play, as well as air pressure and a whole heap of different atmospheric and meteorological effects that may play a part in how quickly things accelerate towards their natural resting place.
I would just like to go with all this with just like one little question about one thing, and then I'll address the whole thing of there's no magnetics and whatnot. I just want to make sure what makes what I have provided and what Fight the Flat Earth has provided, what makes all of those...
Oh. He dropped out for a second there again. What was he going to say? I want to know now. Well, while we wait for Constable to come back in, yeah, I didn't mean to kind of jump in on the debate there. That was just one question that I would really like to have been answered. So we will. I guess I'll start reading super chats until Constable comes back in, because we were going to start wrapping things up. So let me just get the super chats up and I'll start doing that. There it is. Okay. Thank you guys, everyone, for watching. There hopefully is going to be another debate tonight. I'm still trying to find a flat earther. If you are a flat earther out there that wants to debate me after this, Farah, if you want to debate me after this and you're willing to go another couple of hours, then you're welcome to stay on.
It's late, man. I don't think the missus will be too happy.
I know, we've always got a... Yeah, every time I say to her I'm doing late, she's like, "Oh, so you're lying in the morning again?"
I goddamn disconnected again.
Oh, you're back. Right, okay, sorry. Carry on with your point, Constable.
All right, so I just need to reiterate, what was that thing about the magnetic north and apparently no magnetic south?
Well, we don't view as being... We don't think there's a South Pole on our model as such. So, like I said, the actual outer ring could possess some sort of a magnetic property, but as far as being able to prove that myself, it's just speculation.
And what does what the Flat Earth believe is and isn't really a thing have to do with what is actually demonstrable in reality? If it is demonstratable in reality that we do in fact have a southern magnetic pole, and all the Flat Earther says is just, oh, that's just a thing, man. Does that really have any sort of bearing on reality? I'm sorry if that sounds more semantics than anything, but that is a legitimate question as what does what a person thinks has to do with the actual reality of the situation. I could think that there are not terrible people on this planet, but there certainly are serious stacks of shit on this planet.
Oh, okay, so basically you're saying, Constable, that we know there is a magnetic field coming from the South Pole. We know that there is a magnetic south. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the magnetic field is actually measurable. I'm sorry. I will admit right offhand that I do not have personally all the details. In fact, you know, in a more formatted debate, and if this ever comes back up again, I will have a lot more details on this. You know, obviously to give much more, to get into much more scientific specifics on it. But generally, yes, there is a magnetic field, and it is indeed measurable, okay. And in the North and the South Pole.
I'll just present, well, that's one thing. Farah, do you know that there is actually compasses that only work in the southern hemisphere and compasses that only work in the northern hemisphere? Were you aware of that? And why?
I was even aware of that.
Why would you think that is?
Well, there's again numerous possibilities if you're referring to a flat Earth model.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of topic there for me and you to have a debate sometime. But I think we're going to have to wrap up for tonight. So Farah, I would like to offer you the opportunity first to just take a few minutes to give your final thoughts.
Yeah. That was kind of like a repeat of the first debate, really. I think you did a pretty poor job of defending the globe or proving that the curvature exists, or some sort of a spherical observable model is given to us in reality, in physical reality. So it'll probably be the last time I'm engaging with this fool. And yeah, that's me, Faroh Pharms.
Bit of smack talk for the end. Yeah, Faroh's channel is linked in the description. And yeah, I definitely think that a debate will be arranged between me and you. That will be a lot of fun. I thank you, Faroh, for your courteous conduct tonight. There wasn't too much shouting and smack talk, so thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Constable, your final thoughts?
Well, since he fired the first shots in the smack talk, I might as well say, once again, this is a prime and golden example of pigeon shitting on the checkerboard and declaring a win. Did I claim to be actually perfect at this? No, this was free form. I'm obviously not 100% at this. I never said I was 100% at this, but here's one thing I actually did. I actually followed the rules and provided positive evidence for my side, which is about 100 times more than what you did. All you did was, oh, there's no gravity. Oh, we've never been to space. Oh, there's no way to get out there. Oh, the only positive... The only thing you tried to claim positive was a barrier, and even then, you did a shit job at that. Am I perfect at this? No, but I am willing to fully admit that...
All right, okay. All right, let's get to you just wrapping up your thoughts about the debate now, Constable.
I definitely think that this was a monumental improvement of the last time I debated him, and I actually agree. This is the last time I'm debating with this pig-ignorant sovereign citizen sack of shite. Because honestly, you got me more riled up than the mind of God and flat Earth Aussie Bogan at this rate. And frankly, you ain't got a damn leg to stand on. I'm done.
Shots fired. Shots fired. Right, so that's fun. Thank you guys, both of you. I'm going to read the super chats, and then we are going to shut this down. Remember, I am looking for a flat earther to debate. Globely, I see you in there talking all kinds of smack, but as soon as I ask you for a debate, oh no, I'm not going to do that. Stop running away, guys. Okay, so $2 from Milo Lugo. Show us a model of how this works. Yeah, that's not going to happen. $3.33. Oh, conspiracy confirmed. From Rangerman9404. I never thought I'd agree with a Yankees fan. $10 Canadian from Reasonable Assumption. In the morning, just at sunrise, the sun descends down the surfaces of tall mountains and buildings, even if nothing is blocking the sun. This is proof that the Earth is curved. Yep. 50 sex, all the sex from Andreas I'm sorry if I ruined this, Eldritch. Star Trail experiment. 1. Look at ceiling fan. It is moving anti-clockwise. 2. Turn around and bend backwards. Which way is the fan moving? Okay. $6.66 New Zealand dollars. Boating McBoat face. That photo of the one he's referring to is the one with the one chip on the horizon and the one behind it. That was taken with my P1000 from Mount Maungari. I said that wrong, I'm sorry. Beach. Dazza the cameraman took the photos. Was a beautiful day. Yeah, so Boating McBoatface actually took those photos, showing that the ship didn't come back over the horizon. $5 from Space, Why does a little bit of zoom and a whole lot of zoom show the same picture? Yep. $2 New Zealand from Boating McBoatface. Send Dazza the cameraman a link. Get him in here. I'd actually should have done that. You're right. $5 Canadian from Reasonable Assumption. For fuck's sake, it shows them standing next to each hole, and they are the same height with relation to the person. Yeah, referring to the Jeranism experiment. Where interesting. $5 from Bubble Burster. Do not let him get away with dodging the question of why Jism's experiment is invalid. $10 Don't worry, my debate with him will include these things. $5 Canadian from Reasonable Assumption. What caused denier material to drop and not rise? Besides answering just because it does. What caused denser material, sorry. Yeah, again, questions, don't worry, I will raise. $3.33 from Rangerman9404. So stars, planets, etc. should be on the ground? Apparently so. $5 Canadian from Reasonable Assumption. Why is it the natural resting place? God made it so? Do you have an answer? Don't worry, all these questions I'm not forgetting. $5 Australian, John Rapp. So it's elastic dropity. Warning, Will Robinson, Flerfs logic. $5 US from Andrew Stoll. Faroh, how much potential energy is put into a 50-gram pencil when I lift up 1 meter? Would you know the math on that, Faroh?
What was the question, sorry?
How much potential energy is put into a 50-gram pencil when lifted up 1 meter?
Well, I could work it out, but my mental mathematics is going to take a minute. But in response to that, I would have to ask, how much energy does it take for you to hold it suspended in the air? Okay, all right, I won't forget that question. And last one, $2 US from Beeble for Life. When does the sun ever do a right turn? In Flat Earth Crazy Land, apparently. But anyway, do we have any Flat Earthers in the chat that are willing to step up and debate me? Because otherwise, I guess I won't be debating anyone tonight. We'll see what happens. I'm going to see if I can find somebody. If you want to debate, please email me at fighttheflatearth@gmail.com. But for tonight, my thoughts on what just happened was not much evidence was presented really by the Flat Earth side for there being a Flat Earth. The Globe side had some evidence, but maybe some things could have been explained better. I know Constable's still rather new at debating, and you know there's a lot of learning that everyone has to do. Everyone has to start somewhere. I think both participants. See, this is why in boxing they have 3 judges.
Yeah, but I think both participants were very well behaved, and trust me, there will be a continuation with Faroh Pharms on this channel. But for tonight, that is everything. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the super chats. And remember that stupidity is not a right. Fight the Flat Earth. Fight the flat. Fight the flat. Fight the flat. Fight the flat.